Periods of increased market volatility can...
Another big story that we're closely following today, big bank CEOs testifying before lawmakers for the second day in a row. Brian Chung has been all over this story for us. And Brian, we want to get up to speed with a headline that just crossed earlier this hour. Jamie Dimon's comments on crypto. What did he have to say?
Yeah, well, this hearing is a repeat of yesterday's hearing on the Senate side of things, where you have the CEOs of the 6 largest U.S. banks, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Citigroup, Wells Fargo, Morgan Stanley, and also Goldman Sachs. And a lot of the commentary in the questioning today was very similar to yesterday. You heard about a lot of the political jawboning in terms of whether or not these banks are getting too involved or not involved enough in things like climate change or racial equity. But something that was very interesting was some commentary from Jamie Dimon on cryptocurrencies, which was something that wasn't a topic addressed in yesterday's hearing. Here's what Jamie Dimon said about his thoughts on cryptocurrency and other related technologies.
They haven't changed that much. And put aside blockchain and put aside stable coins, which is supported by assets. Something that's not supported by anything I do not believe has much value. My own personal advice to people is stay away from it. That does not mean the clients don't want it. This goes back to how you have to run a business. I don't smoke marijuana, but if you make it nationally legal, I'm not going to stop our people from banking it and et cetera. I don't tell people how to spend their money, regardless of how I might personally feel about some of the items that people might buy with their money, stuff like that. So we're debating, should we make it available in some way, in a safe way that people can buy and sell it and put it in the statement systems. But my own personal view, it's nothing like a fiat currency. It's nothing like gold. Buyer beware. And I do think that eventually the regulators who are a day late and a dollar short should be paying a lot more attention in the future, like payment for order flow, high frequency trading, cryptocurrency, and put a legal regulatory framework around it.
Thank you so much.
You can see how the CEO of the U.S.'s largest bank was getting excited about that question, but he was saying that his personal views don't affect JP Morgan Chase's decisions business-wide to allow cryptocurrency to be part of the financial services that it offers. Now, of course, this hearing is still going on right now. This hearing kicked off at about noon, so it's entering its 4th hour right now. Who knows how long it's going to go, but of course, we'll have the full coverage of that committee hearing continuing right here on Yahoo Finance throughout the afternoon, guys.
These days, many people are wondering, could this be the right time to invest? As eToro traders have shown, periods of increased market volatility can carry
Stands for Special Purpose Acquisition Company. They're essentially companies that are formed solely for the purpose of buying other businesses. SPACs raise money for these acquisitions by listing on the stock market themselves. For companies that get acquired by a SPAC, the benefit is that they can quickly and easily list on the stock market. For investors in SPACs, putting money into these vehicles allows them access to private businesses that they otherwise wouldn't be able to invest in. SPACs, also known as blank check companies, have been around for around 30 years but exploded in popularity last year. SPACs raised $80 billion in the US last year, which accounted for half of all the money raised through IPOs in the US. Activity has only accelerated so far in 2021. The boom in SPACs has caught the eye of decision makers here in the UK. Chancellor Rishi Sunak recently said he wants to reform stock market rules to make it easier for SPACs to list in London. However, not everybody is so convinced. JP Morgan recently warned that the market tends to run in cycles of boom and bust. David Schwimmer, the chief executive of the London Stock Exchange, said he was seeing signs of froth in the SPAC market that he warned could end poorly for many investors. Find out more on Yahoo UK.
During lockdown, thousands of us bought, this is your cue, dogs. Gus and I are here to talk to you about the 3 things we bought over the past year that now neither of us could live without. And the first thing I'm going to talk about, because they're here, Lily's Kitchen chicken jerky treats. They are made with 80% real chicken and all organic ingredients, and Gus loves them. Let's give him one more, so thank you for his cameo.
World over, most general partners and limited partners are struggling to manage huge private equity data sets and conducting efficient investor reporting.
I'm Emily Chang in San Francisco, and this is Bloomberg Technology. President Biden chose Cleveland as the city to deliver a speech on the economy and his proposed $1.9 trillion infrastructure and investment plan. For more on what that plan entails, our audiences across Bloomberg Television and Bloomberg Radio, welcome Gina Raimondo, U.S. Commerce Secretary. Secretary Raimondo, thank you so much for joining us. President Biden today said his economic plan is working to bring America out of the pandemic, but we need to invest more in education, in infrastructure to stay competitive. What are the musts that you believe need to be included?
Yes, thank you. Well, this is about rebuilding for the future. I mean, the president is, of course, right. The rescue package is working. It's pulling us out of the pandemic, creating 500,000 jobs a month, which is a fantastic pace. But we need to prepare for the future. We need to invest in childcare so that people can go back to work. We still have 2 million women who have dropped out of the workforce. We have to make sure every American has access to broadband. The president's calling for historic investments in broadband. It's not okay. It's not acceptable that we still have millions of Americans without access to broadband. We need to invest in job training and apprenticeships so people can have the skills they need to get the jobs of today and tomorrow. And we need to invest in manufacturing so that we make critical goods such as semiconductors in America again. So, it's not enough to pull ourselves out of the pandemic. It's time to rebuild our infrastructure, rebuild for the future so Americans can compete and our children have a chance.
And yet the counteroffer from Republicans doesn't seem much higher than the original. Where's the progress that you see, and how long is it worth continuing the negotiation?
Yes, well, I should say, we have to give them credit. I have been involved in these discussions and in these negotiations. They're operating in good faith, and they came back to us with a higher number. It is progress. There's no doubt about it. It's progress. I think if I had said to you a few months ago that Republicans would be coming back to the president with a nearly $1 trillion counteroffer, you might not have believed it. So we're still at the table. We are trying. It isn't enough, as you say. They're not very clear about how they propose to pay for it. And of course, the president has been crystal clear. We're not going to tax or burden middle America or middle class Americans. But, our job is to stay at the table and to find some common ground. And so we will continue to do that.
The president talked about how the administration is working to combat supply issues, combat issues with computer chips, as you mentioned, and America can't innovate without chips. You just held a summit with the companies that supply chips and the companies that need chips, from Google to Amazon to car makers. What's the next step here?
So right now, as we are talking to one another, the piece of legislation which would fund a semiconductor fund at $52 billion is on the Senate floor. In fact, I was talking to senators before I came over here, and there is a sense of optimism that this will get across the finish line perhaps as early as today or tonight to fund a CHIPS fund at $52 billion, which would come to the Department of Commerce. So, of course, it's not over till it's over, and, of course, it has to get through the House. But at this point, I think there's broad bipartisan recognition that we can't afford not to do this. I mean, think about your own life. Everything you do relies upon chips. Your phone, your appliances, your computer, your car, artificial intelligence, not to mention the national defense applications. So we have to get it done, and I believe we will get it done.
Are you hearing what you want to hear from the industry? Are you getting what you need on that front?
Yes, thank you. So as you mentioned, I convened over 35 CEOs last week, leaders in the semiconductor industry, and they have been very collaborative and really leaning in with us to find a solution to this problem. It's an economic security problem, it's a national security problem, and I have to say thank you to everyone that we have been engaged with. They've been great partners, and this will require public-private partnership. We can't do it. Government can't fix this problem alone, and the private sector needs to be there, and I think they will be.
GM just announced it's restarting production at several plants that had been idled due to the chip shortage. Meantime, you've got COVID cases rising in Taiwan, which is the heart of the semiconductor industry. Could that impact supply, and will the U.S. do anything to help?
Well, you put your finger on a very important problem, which is that we are heavily dependent on a company called TSMC, which is based in Taiwan, for a high percentage of our semiconductors, and which is exactly why we need to make semiconductors in America. You know, it would be our plan to build another 6 or 7 manufacturing operations in America over time, so that we won't be so vulnerable to, you know, relying overly on one company or one country.
So, speaking of countries, obviously improving infrastructure, improving supply chains helps to boost U.S. competitiveness against China. The administration has been reviewing its approach to China. When are we going to hear more about the findings and the strategy there?
I would say that this is an ongoing process more than a process with a, you know, particular big announcement or deadline. But we're doing it now. You know, for example, what we're talking about, semiconductors, that's core to our strategy as it relates to China. We need to invest in America. The president's jobs plan is all about competing with China, improve our education system, improve our infrastructure, invest in manufacturing. You know, the way to compete with China is to run faster, to invest in America. And then in terms of defense, we haven't slowed down. You know, in my department, we've continued to add Chinese companies to the entities list. We've subpoenaed a number of Chinese companies to extract information from them, and we're going to do what we need to do to protect American industry.
Meantime, the Colonial Pipeline hack has raised awareness about the vulnerability of our infrastructure to cyber attacks. What do you see as the biggest risks to businesses here, and what does your budget do to address this?
Yeah, unfortunately, this is a large and growing risk to U.S. businesses, and I think Colonial was a wake-up call to all American businesses that they need to do more. And I think particularly smaller businesses, for whom it is difficult, need to invest more. We are investing heavily at the Commerce Department in shoring up our own cybersecurity, as well as researching cyber and cyber technology so that we could continue to make ourselves more secure.
Now, the president also today emphasized how the administration is working to protect small businesses from anti-competitive forces. The U.S. obviously has expressed concerns about big U.S. tech companies and their power. Europe also has expressed those concerns. Will big tech regulation be on the agenda for the G7?
You know, that is a better question for the Treasury Secretary or others. I would say, for my part, we are heavily engaged with the EU in discussions around privacy protection of data, tech regulation, and our collaboration and partnership with Europe is important. It's important for companies on both sides of the Atlantic. And so we are working, I am in constant contact with tech companies in America, to make big and small, to make sure that their interests are represented, but also with our counterparts in Europe to make sure, you know, we're allies. We have the same values. We believe in privacy. We believe in openness. And so we are working hard with the Europeans to come to a common set of values so that we can continue to operate across the Atlantic.
All right. Well, on behalf of our Bloomberg TV and radio audiences, thank you so much, U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo there. Secretary Raimondo, appreciate you taking the time. All right. Turning now to how U.S. markets performed on the day. I want to get to our Bloomberg Markets reporter, Kriti Gupta in New York. Kriti, walk us through what happened out there today.
A little bit of a mixed picture, a little bit of green on the screen when you're looking at the S&P 500, but when you're looking at tech, a lot of red, and it looks like the NASDAQ was hit harder than the New York FANG index, which of course has those big tech stocks. If the SOX index was the notable outperformer, well, let's just get the macro out of the way and jump right to meme stocks, because that seems to be where all the action was, especially as AMC, one of those meme stocks, hit a $10 billion valuation in its biggest intraday gain since back in January. So that idea that we were saying maybe that retail bid, maybe that's kind of in the past now, not so much. I mean, just take a look at this chart behind me from year to date. That blue line, this is an index of those meme stocks, those restricted Robinhood stocks, GameStop, AMC, Express, etc. The bottom, that's going to be your S&P 500. So you can really see that outperformance has not only maintained, but you're starting to see a little bit of an uptick more recently. That being said, when we're talking about the speculation, talking about the volatility, we have to talk about crypto. I want to show you what Bitcoin is doing on a 1 month basis, because we all remember that big kind of hit that it took last week. It looks like since then you've started to see it trade a little bit more sideways. Not a huge move up, not a huge move down, just kind of hanging in there. Let's see if that pattern continues, Emily.
All right, thanks so much, Kriti Gupta, hanging in. All right, coming up, all eyes on Amazon as more states build an antitrust case against the e-commerce giant. This after Washington, D.C. filed the first. We're going to talk about which attorneys general could be next. This is Bloomberg.
Alle bedrijven willen gevonden worden. Dus als jij bedrijven vindbaar maakt, betalen ze je daar graag voor. Hoe maak jij bedrijven vindbaar? Heel simpel, door Google advertenties voor ze op te zetten. Ik leer je graag hoe ik dit de afgelopen 5 jaar al doe en hoe ik hier mijn geld mee verdien, zodat jij dat ook kan gaan doen. Of in ieder geval je eigen bedrijf of dat van anderen vindbaar kan maken en een zakcentje bij kan verdienen naast je huidige baan of studie. Want het kost niet veel tijd. In het gratis webinar laat ik je live zien hoe ik dit doe. Dus vind je dit interessant? Klik dan snel hieronder om naar de webinar te gaan voordat deze advertentie verdwijnt. Check het webinar.
Monica, I just sent you the email with the client.
I'm in the doc now, but I think it's an older version. Can you send an updated?
Monica, check your messages when you can. There's something important in there.